Part of this free market neo-populist debate that we'll hear maybe more about tonight as the former president formally accepts the nomination tonight. His first major, meanwhile, it was Vance's first major speech accepting the GOP nomination for vice president. Eamon Javers has been in Milwaukee all week, has been well versed in this discussion, Eamon, that we're having yet again today.
Yeah, that's right, Carl. You're mentioning that quote from J.D. Vance last night about Wall Street. I want to play that for you because I think it does mark a real break. I was surprised, frankly, at how much economic populism was in this J.D. Vance speech last night. We knew that this was coming with the J.D. Vance pick. We knew the Vance pick signaled a shift in the Republican Party's thinking about the economy, but he went much more overt with it, I think, last night than a lot of people were necessarily expecting. Here's what he had to say about the Republican Party's relationship with Wall Street. Take a listen.
We're done, ladies and gentlemen, catering to Wall Street. We'll commit to the working man. We're done importing foreign labor. We're going to fight for American citizens and their good jobs and their good wages.
I was just emailing earlier this morning with one of the architects of the conservative economic populist movement. And this person, I said to this person, you know, people on Wall Street are a little bit stunned or surprised by some of that language last night. This person says they shouldn't be stunned if they've been paying attention. Probably they should take even greater note of what wasn't said in that speech last night. No mention of tax cuts, shrinking government, deregulating, or job creators. So those are the sort of archetypical Republican economic positions of the past. This is a very new Republican Party that's aimed very much at working class America. They're aimed at union voters, union participants, and they want to reach out to that base that has traditionally been a Democratic political base. If they can do that, it's a sea change in the American political landscape, but it also has enormous implications. As you guys have been discussing, we've all been discussing all week, enormous implications for Wall Street and for big business as well.
Eamon, notable for sure, but what about the idea here in terms of how much of this is actually part of former President Trump's thinking, and how, in any way, the views and perspectives of his vice presidential nominee will actually translate into action from a potential Trump administration should he win?
Right. Well, look, a striking difference, right, between that Bloomberg Business Week interview with Donald Trump earlier in the week where he was talking about, he wants to keep on Jay Powell. He wants to lower the corporate rate maybe to 15%, down from 21%. That's stuff that Wall Street will eat up. But, Donald Trump has a political skill of telling different audiences exactly what they want to hear. Donald Trump in that Bloomberg Business Week article was speaking to Wall Street, right? This is the Republican Party last night speaking to Main Street and to a broad array of American voters, not just MAGA, but the rest of the country as well. Trump could have excised those lines from J.D. Vance's speech last night. They had control of the pen of what J.D. Vance was going to say. They did not do that, right? And the reason they didn't do that is because the campaign believes this is a winning message.
But, Eamon, you do have conflicting doctrines. On the one hand, you have a presidential candidate who favors deregulation, which often plays to the Wall Street barons, so to speak, because deregulation means more takeovers, it means more IPOs, it means easier business. And on the other hand, you have Vance's message, which really is not really about deregulation, but is about protecting the working person. How do you explain the dichotomy of views?
Well, look, I mean, I think if you look at the idea of the American government as a system of sort of levers of power, right, and regulation is a lever of power that government uses over business, just think about Donald Trump's approach to governance and sort of the chips that he has on the table. I don't see Donald Trump necessarily looking to unilaterally disarm and give up levers of power, right? I mean, I think you look at Donald Trump's approach to all of the transactions, both political and business, in his life. He wants power. He wants to be able to use it. He has an instinct for leverage, and regulation and the ability to oversee that gives a president leverage.